Okay, ready to go. Alright, so today I thought I'd answer a question I get quite often of how I became a model. Okay, so growing up, I was never really into modeling or fashion or anything like that. I was really into playing sports, running around outside, climbing trees. I watched a lot of SpongeBob, comic books, like regular kid stuff. And I've always been pretty lanky. Like growing up, I was like pretty slim, and I was kind of tall, not like noticeably tall, but tall enough. Actually, my mom tried to get me and my siblings into modeling when we were kids, but that never really worked out. Like it never really went anywhere. Despite my questionable fashion choice all throughout elementary school, I was always pretty self-conscious about my appearance. My mom is a hairdresser, so I would get my hair cut like whenever I wanted to, so I was always really particular about it, and I was always that cool guy in school who had like the really cool, crazy hair. Actually, when I was a kid, I had the biggest insecurity about my forehead because it was freaking giant, and like it still kind of is, but my whole body and face has kind of grown with it, so it doesn't look out of proportion. But back then, I could like fit all 5 fingers on it. I literally had a 5 head. Now it's back to 4, but it was huge. In fact, my whole head's pretty big. Like I don't know, big head. So that was a really big insecurity for me. So I started getting the idea of being a model in late high school, and it was when random people at work or at school would tell me, hey, you should model. And I always thought it'd be cool, but I never really I was just like, oh, thanks. Like I never really took the compliments too far. And then eventually I started thinking about it more and more, and I eventually told my best friend Jahangir, I was like, hey dude, one day I want to be a model. And he's like, go for it, man. I was like, alright. And around this time too, I started getting more into fashion, like not modeling, but more so like clothes and styles. And I was also part of student council in high school, so I was always in the public eye, and I loved it because I just loved being the center of attention and having all eyes on me. But I never really said it or showed it just because I don't really like that whole personality trait. And then university came, and I studied kinesiology at Western University in London, Ontario. And I pushed the idea of being a model to the back of my mind so that I could pursue this health and fitness route. And what I always attribute me becoming a model to was joining the Western Cheerleading team. So I joined in my first year, and what gave me a bit of an edge to make the team was that in high school I did parkour with my friend at the park. So really sketchy flips and like lots of cuts and bruises, but I could already flip going into university. And when I finally accepted Western, one of my friends said, hey, you should join the Western Cheerleading team. They do flips too. So I was like, yeah, sure, like whatever, I'll try it. And then I made the team. They cleaned up my form to make it more gymnast-like. And I learned how to stunt and basket and do pyramids and all that stuff. In my third year, we followed the Western football team to U of T for a night game. It was early October of 2015. And after the night game, it was about 10 o'clock. So my mom lives in Toronto, so I went to go visit her, and we decided to go get drinks with her friend at the Shangri-La Hotel. So we get to the lounge area of the hotel, and her friend's name is Julia, and she's sitting with all these guys, and one of the guys happens to be the founder of Toronto Men's Fashion Week, Jeff Rustia. So after a couple drinks, we start to get to know each other, we're just talking, and in the middle of the night, he says to me, I want you to walk for me. And at this point, I was hyped, because as soon as I found out that he was the founder, I was like, yo, this could be my into modeling. So he asked me, and I was like, yeah, sure, like I'm in school, but like I'm definitely down to do it. And a couple months later, I found myself at the casting for all the models for Toronto Men's Fashion Week. And I ended up walking for 7 shows in my first season of Toronto Men's Fashion Week, so that was pretty good, is what they told me. They're like, yeah, that's a lot of shows. And at the end of the show, I met this guy named Marc, who's my now current modeling coach, and he got me an interview with Plutino in Toronto. So I went to the interview, and I got signed with them in March of 2016. This was in the middle of my third year, so the first year and a half of modeling, I was actually in London. And since I was so far away, because everything's in Toronto, I had a meeting with my agent, and we agreed that they would send me all the jobs they could, but I could only make what I could realistically, was convenient for me, just because of the commute and like school, midterms, and all that stuff. So I got a handful of gigs in my third and fourth year, but not that much, just because like school was keeping me pretty busy. Cheer was like every week, and I had a lot of commitments back in London. But the transition into modeling was kind of weird, because cheer needed me to be so big and strong so that I could lift and throw the girls, but modeling wanted me to be slim, right? Because that's just like the look that they want. So 4 years of cheerleading and powerlifting at the gym added a good amount of bulk to my frame, especially my legs. My legs were like disproportionately bigger than the rest of my body, my quads. And they were actually so big that at Tom, I couldn't fit into some of the designer pants. So like, I was kind of panicking, but like we made it work. So for my 4th year, I was trying to maintain my strength while cutting for modeling so that I could fit into pants. So in terms of the actual work itself, it's pretty easy. I mean, I think the hardest thing you'll do is stand for a couple hours and not eat while receiving harsh criticism from a photographer. But in terms of maintaining my body, it's pretty easy because I'm used to training really, really hard for cheer 6 times a week. And I'm in kinesiology too. So like I eat, breathe, and sleep this whole fitness stuff. And I also worked in London as a strength and conditioning coach. So I was used to using my body to demonstrate movements or exercises for the kids that I was training. And I was also a server at this restaurant called The Bungalow in London, a gourmet burger place. So I'm used to speed walking around for like 5 hours, not eating food, and just like being on for the customers. In terms of personality, I think I've stayed pretty much the same. I mean, I try to be really modest and humble, just because I don't like the idea of being cocky or whatever, but in an industry where it's all about your looks, it can be kind of weird and difficult to maintain that humble opinion of yourself. So what I ended up doing was like, I made 2 personalities, one for the camera and one for regular life. So in front of the camera, I wasn't like conceited or anything, but I would kind of, feel myself and think I'm the shit, but still be a nice guy and pretend I'm a celebrity for a little bit. And then as soon as the shoot's over, it's just like back to regular old me, like just nice guy, I don't know. And the reason I made this personality is because sometimes for specific shots, you kind of have to, think you're the shit, or you kind of have to be a little cocky to get the look that the photographer wants. Getting used to being in front of the camera so often was actually pretty difficult. Like it took me about 2 years to get fully comfortable in front of the camera and actually know what I'm doing. Until this time, I was just like super awkward, didn't know what I was doing, and I was like kind of self-conscious too about my legs because they were so big and like no one really wanted that kind of look. It was definitely a very long and strange process. But some advice for those looking to get into modeling. 1, obvious, take care of your body, work out, take care of your hair, your face, your hands, nails, your teeth, because that's what people are paying you for, that's your selling point. 2, go to a lot of agencies and their casting calls or their auditions, because you need to get a feel for all the different agencies and which one feels most at home and feels the most right. And when you talk with the agents, see how you communicate, because you should be talking very regularly with your agents because they know what they're doing. They've been doing this for a long time, and if you don't know what you're doing, you kind of need someone to show you what to do and explain things to you. They set you up with jobs, they want you to make money. They definitely have a perspective on what's best for you. Now, I'm a hypocrite because I only visited Plutino and I signed with them like almost immediately. In fact, days after signing with them, Sutherland Models contacted me and asked me to join their roster, and I was like, oh shit, like I literally just signed with Plutino and I didn't talk to anyone else. But I'm very fortunate to be extremely happy with my agency and the agents, and we get along really well, things are going great, so I'm pretty lucky that way. Especially considering they were my first pick and like the only one that I've been with. Number 3, it's a very spontaneous and sporadic industry, so if you like stable, consistent jobs, this may not be the job for you. Sometimes I'll get castings or auditions for stuff the day before, or one time it was the same day, it was like a few hours later after they emailed me. So you have to be really open with your schedule and be able to make these castings wherever they are in the city, just because that's how you're making money, right? Like you can't make money by requests only. Unless you're just like extremely good looking, then like I don't know how you do it, but I mean the rest of us, we have to go to the castings, and that could be any of the 7 days of the week at any time. You could have no jobs for like 2 weeks straight, and then out of nowhere your agent will call you saying you have a casting tonight. And number 4, you're going to be exposed to the public eye very often. You have to do a lot of self-promotion, so be prepared for good and bad comments or criticism or people judging you. And this can come from anyone, friends, family, strangers. It really helps to develop a thick skin because you will have a lot of people looking at you and talking about you and judging you, because that's just how people are. And for me personally, I just don't really care too much about what people think. So I'm gonna do me, and if you don't like it or you think I suck or you hate me, like, sucks for you, man. I'm just gonna keep doing it. But it does kind of help to keep a safe distance from the comments that you get, even if they're good too. Like, you don't want it to get to your head too much. So yeah, that's all I can say really. I mean, I'm pretty new at this too, but That's just my experience. I hope you guys learned something or gained a new perspective on the industry and what it's like to live and work as a model. And now you also know a little bit more about me. And thanks for watching. Peace, guys.
Classy as a stronger, glistening under headlights, piercing through the midnight.